throughout the lockdown so that we can entertain, inspire, and just help as best we can our guitar community around the world. I know a lot of members of the Academy come here to say hello to one another and feel connected. So hopefully this can provide the same for you. In today's session, we don't have an interview, we don't have a lesson, we don't have a harmony lesson, but rather we are going to be calling up both Dave Belcher and Nikki Dodesco, who are on the CGC team, and they will be joining in a bit of a roundtable concerning feedback with the Classical Guitar Corner exams. Now, we have a process here at the Academy where every 6 months we open up for grade exam submissions. Our curriculum is partitioned into 8 different grades currently, and that starts you off from the very, very beginning material in grade 1 all the way through to advanced material in grade 8. And along with the repertoire that is selected for those exams, there's also a technical routine that is one of the practice routines that we have available in books. And in addition to that, we have a self-assessment, which is often a really nice opportunity to reflect on your progress, think about strengths and weaknesses, challenges, and setting goals moving forward. And in the higher grades, we actually have a theory component, an improvisation component, and even a composition component. And they are very much in the view of understanding functional harmony and demonstrating your use of harmony, not only from playing music, but actually writing it down or improvising. So it's a little bit of a unique take on it, but I think it works really, really well, and people tend to enjoy it. So this round in March, we have the window for submissions is open for a month. We actually had 127 exam submissions, which is fantastic. Also a huge amount of work. And I would like to extend my gratitude to all the people that submitted, because that is a huge amount of work on their part, but especially to James Erickson, Nicoletta Tedesco, David Belcher, who put a lot of time, thought, and effort into the exam responses. When we offer responses to people in the Academy, we talk about their playing, we give them advice about moving forward, and we also have a pass or a resubmit suggestion, or sometimes we ask for something specific to be resubmitted because it's a little bit of a linchpin thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's sort of my topic today in the discussion. Nikki and Dave have their bullet points that they want to go over, some reflections and thoughts on the submissions. And I also have some maybe slightly broader topics I want to talk about. For those of you who are joining that haven't been to one of these before, we do have a mailing list that I send out on the same day as the live stream. That is classicalguitarcorner.com/live. And that means that we'll give you that extra little reminder that one of these sessions is going live. And currently we are running these sessions Tuesday and Thursday each week at 4 p.m. And I'm so glad today to be joined by the CGC team, because although I very much enjoy doing these, it can get a little lonesome to be on your own in the live stream. So I'm very excited to call up Dave and Nikki shortly. So what else? We've been doing so many activities at the Academy. It's been really wonderful. We had and I will try and make a GIF out of this if I can. We had a lovely we have open mics and performance seminars on Sundays, but last Sunday we had a wonderful happy hour. This really was just a chance to unwind, relax, and we invited people to share some fun things that the only rule was it couldn't be a classical guitar performance. So we had people sharing paintings with some wonderful artists in our community. We had some jokes. We had some sort of origami, but with a handkerchief. So we had a mouse made out of a handkerchief. Poetry was read. What else? We had songs sung, and we also had some comic songs sung. So it was a really wonderful experience. And so, you know, one of the amazing things about Classical Guitar Corner is the community that is the lifeblood of this whole I don't know what to call it, academy. It's a really wonderful group of people, and it's fueled by a shared passion and interest of classical guitar. But there's no way around it. I think we're just very fortunate to have this community of people. I'm not exactly sure how it came to be like this. It's not something you can choose by design, but I'm very, very grateful to have this community, and it was lovely to share some moments of levity on that live stream, the live Zoom call. A few people did ask, sort of from one of these sessions, I believe, how to access that. And obviously we're doing these live things on YouTube and Facebook, and that is for the public because we believe we have a role of service to play for the greater guitar community. But a lot of what we do is for the academy, for those people who decided to become members of the academy. So this is a nice example of some of the community. And you can see a lot of people in the comments saying, oh, these are very familiar names. Hello, Andrew from Liverpool, Mr. Robert Guerrero from Philly, Vaughn all the way from Ventura, Martha, St. Louis. It's just really nice to see everyone's names. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Well, I believe now that everyone is come in to the live stream, we shall give our illustrious teammates a call. Please do let me know you can hear me clearly and see me well, and also when we do get Dave and Nikki, and please let me know that you can hear and see them as well. All right, here we go. Technology. Let's see if they pick up. Let's see if they oh, someone's picking up. There's a Dave Belcher. Hey, Dave. And there's a Nikki Tedesco. All right, I'm going to bring you up so everyone can see you. Technology.
Yay.
All right, so, well, this reminds me very much of our Tuesday morning meetings. So we're about to go through our agenda. No, we will not do that at all. How are you both doing since I talked to you 20 minutes ago?
I'm exhausted. I'm just kidding. I'm fine.
So much has happened between now and then.
It's all good. It's a good look. We were looking forward to this call with everybody, and I say hi to all the people that are tuned in. I also saw that my sister tuned in too from Italy. It's pretty late there.
Oh, ciao. That's all I can say. That's all I got. Ciao. Well, that's great.
We should do a live stream on Italian words again.
Oh yes. A piacere. I have to say that was one of my favorite podcasts. Was going through those Italian terms. It was a very fun moment. Nice to have been at your wedding, actually.
Yeah, I remember that actually got married a few months ago, and I saw again the pictures a few days ago, and it was great. I was like, it's awesome. It was a very, very good day.
Mm-hmm. Well, Richard says buongiorno. We've got some Italian coming in the comments. No, everyone's saying hello, and they can see you and hear you very well, so that's great. So what we're going to do is we're going to have we have 3 different sections. Dave, Nikki, do either of you want to go first? Get this out of the way so you can crack open a beer and just relax for the rest of the conversation. I'm going to go last. I think my topics are a little bit more broad. Do either of you want to go first?
Should we roll a dice? Right. That doesn't really matter. Since we are also talking about 2 different topics, doesn't really matter.
All right. Well, I'm going to go from what I can see left to right. So, Nikki, you're going to go first.
Okay. Sounds good.
So what we'll do is we're going to we've each gone through and thought of some points to talk about that we noticed in the exams that we hope will be useful feedback for everyone in the academy. Here, Roger says ladies first. There you go. He's always a gentleman, so of course he would say that. And we're just going to give the floor to each person, but we do welcome questions. So if you have questions, we will address them after each sort of section. So we've got 3 sections, and please do feel free to ask questions that do come up, but we'll answer them at the end of this section. So, Nikki, I'm going to give you, if I can technology wrangle this. Does this work? Oh, that's a Dave. There we go. There's a Nikki. All right, Nikki. Well, take it away.
Yes, of course. As probably you understood, all of you, that we are doing these live stream as almost like a wrap-up session after a long month of exams. This year we received so many, and we've been grading and preparing reviews for the exams for well, a little bit more than a month. So it's been a lot of watching students playing and their submission. And at this point, we are able to sum what we've seen. And there's recurrent things, recurrent issues, recurrent thing that we notice in playing of people. So it's probably really useful to address those common issues, common things that we saw, and say our tips and share these tips with you. So I'm really happy that we're doing this today. So I will most focus on right hand, and I will also have a couple of topics, one of left hand and one more on musicality and a broader thing. And I probably will end with that because it will also open so many questions probably. We will never end that conversation. So I'll start with the right hand first. So mainly, and I have to say that I've been focusing on grade 5 and grade 1s most of the time in these, and a few grade 4s in these reviews. If you are not a CGC member out there, you probably think, what's grade 5, what's grade 1? But we have a progressive curriculum, and grade 1 is like the beginner section. And then when we get to grade 5, it's a whole different kind of exam. And it's already more advanced. It's going towards very hard pieces, like the Bach's Bourrée, the Prelude, the Bizet Prelude, and some of the source studies, like in B minor, D major, and etc. So I had to focus on 2 different aspects, but some of the things were recurrent in both grades too, especially talking about right hand. So the first thing that I want to say is one of the best rules ever for me that really changed my life, and is we should go for the easy and more relaxed playing. like David Lesnar book, Play with Ease. Like he summed that in a very good way in an entire book. But what our ultimate goal, I think, as guitarists should be always like to play as easy and as relaxed as possible. So avoid extra tension, avoid pain, and avoid every extra movement that we don't need. And that doesn't mean that we have to be constrained, like strict and not be able to be free when we play. But because we are avoiding all the extra tension, we are actually more free to really play and think about playing. So all the comments that I found myself giving after the exams were all towards this goal. Is like, we're not saying these things because we want to give rules. It's just because we want to see people have more fun playing and get rid of all these extra things that are an obstacle for playing. So that's the thing that really changed the way I played, the way I studied, the way I practiced, and this is also the direction I decided to take, and it I think it was so beneficial. So let me take the guitar. Enough talking. I go with the instrument, and one thing that I often saw with the right hand was a lot of vertical moving. First aspect that I addressed and I saw, and I felt like probably is more common than we think. I will just readjust this so you might see better my hand. So vertical movement can happen in different ways. One is like literal jumping, and I'm exaggerating. Probably like if you do some of these in your playing, it's probably a little bit, and I'm exaggerating just to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. But for instance, this like really kind of jumping up, and I saw that even in arpeggios, for instance. This, and of course, what this does, it's a lot of extra movement, and we need more time to come back. It's a bigger journey for the fingers to go back and be in position in the strings, on the strings. Grammar, Nikki. And the other vertical movement that happens is that it's less visible, but it's a finger vertical movement from the knuckle. So the knuckle goes up more than it needs. So we're actually doing these. And sometimes this same plucking could result in like kind of a circular movement too, kind of a bicycle movement. These, something like that. All these in the right hand is actually taking more energy and more time. Are there fun comments? I see people laughing.
Someone said busted. I'm not sure who JN is. James Murphy, maybe? Could be.
So, yeah, but this is normal. I think it's also very it's for beginners, and not just for beginners. Even if we just create habits that we cannot get rid of, it's so not natural movement what we're doing on the guitar. We're not used to do that with our hands. It's all new for our muscles. So understanding the best and more efficient plucking on the guitar is not easy at all. And all these extra movements are causing us like to be slower and less accurate. For instance, if we move too much, then we probably not even hit the right string anymore when we go back, because we're less accurate. And also it creates tension. When we do the movement up with the knuckle, it's actually like bending the tendons also too. So everything is kind of against our playing. So what do we do for a more efficient plucking? And actually, I will try to show it from this angle. The movement should be really little and effective, and starting from the first knuckle and coming back, but just in rest position, not up, because this is too much, we don't need it. It's just coming back. It's actually, we put some tension and pressure on the finger. Of course, we hit the string, and then we don't even move the finger. We just let it go and relax. And we think about the next finger. So what it does on the string is that we don't see any movement. Like my hand is pretty relaxed. I'm just hitting from here and coming back, from here and coming back. And this also helps to not maintain extra tension on some fingers, because it usually happens that you play one string and you leave it there, and then you have to move on, but you still have tension on that finger. Or maybe you're playing with the thumb and you have all the other fingers tucked in like that, and extra tension again on the hand. So how do we work on that? We should always go back to the basics. Even if we are advanced, sometimes go back and check in our basic, like just open string. Just think about what we're doing with the right hand. Just open strings and see what's happening in our movement. So even though you might know already some of these things, go back, film yourself. It's never enough. So we can always go back and see if we're doing some of these bad habits. Another thing is, for instance, when we play arpeggios or just open strings like that, we can rest the thumb just for practice purposes and see and try to avoid jumping with the hand. If we rest one finger, it's most likely that we stay there. So that's like some of the details about these. Of course, we could talk forever, but I will move on to another right hand thing, that is tone production. But if you then at the end, if you have some questions about these, I can also go into some more details. But another thing is not just, okay, how we move the fingers, but how we attack with the finger on the string. And it's not just something I saw, but also something I saw in the questions, in the notes from the students. A lot of questions about, oh, I don't like my tone, or how do I work on that? I don't like my nails, I don't like these. And it's so many doubts also, not just clear things from the video. And two things. One is position. I'm one of those, I'm not that old, but I'm one of those that at the beginning of the guitar journey was taught to play like this. Very perpendicular, like very old-fashioned style. And I had to change that on my journey years later, but I really started like this. And one thing about tone is what's our position of the right hand in the alignment of hand, arm, forearm, and till the elbow. So what we should aim for is the most relaxed and aligned position. Andrea Dieci, that wonderful Italian guitarist that was giving me some master classes. I was studying with him back in many years ago for a year, and he said one day, it was a pen, it was not nail file, but it will do the job. He told me, like, grab the pen. And I grabbed it, and he was like, great, you don't grab the pen like that. You don't grab it like with like the natural position and the most natural movement of your hand is just relax and align. That's effective. So you should be able to use the same alignment and the same natural alignment on the guitar. So just try that and find your position that should be as relaxed as possible. That is not bending anything in any direction, because we also see that sometimes. We don't just see perpendicular hands, but also more like another angle, like more like a lute player. And so that's one thing that really helps the tone, because this is very bright. We can use it sometimes if we need bright sounds. But as a natural sound, I would recommend a warmer sound. It's also what all the students are looking for. And this more relaxed position and different kind of attack on the finger that for me is on the internal part of the finger instead of the external part. I don't enter how we file nails because it's very personal. And I know that I file a way, Simon in another way, and Dave in another way. And all we are right because it works for us. but the attack actually on the internal part of the finger works for me, and that's how I get my warmer sound. And of course you can play around with this different angle and maybe play around with how you file your nails and try to find that movement. But these together, how we move our fingers and the more natural position of the hand, they will all contribute on a more effective right hand. Faster, quicker movements, and also warmer sound. That is what everybody is looking for, I think. So those are the main thoughts I had on right hand, and I think this was what I wanted you to take away from this little moment. And now let's go to the other two topics that I had in mind. One, and I saw it a lot, especially on upper grades, of course, because on the practice routines, there's a lot of like scales on one string, or scales that go up like 2 or 3 octave scales. It's about shift. We enter a very big topic here, but just one thing I want you to focus on, and is how we shift without making a glissando. So what I've heard a lot, especially for instance on some left-hander arpeggios, it's shifting. I'm exaggerating again. Nobody did it that clear, but something like we drag the sound till the next note, and it's actually super easy to have that. It's not really easy to do shifts, especially because we don't want to lift the finger and to be insecure and jump, because we cannot jump. That's not the point of the shift. We have to still like be able to orient ourselves and our fingers on the fretboard, and but on the same time we want a clear shift. And one way I want to explain this is, yes, you don't have to lift your fingers at all. Like when we do shifts, we want the finger as a reference. Even if it's the finger that does the shift, or if it's a guide finger that will guide our shift, because sometimes could be that we move with the second finger and then we put down the one, and we have a guide finger that helps us in the shift. But we should take off the pressure from the fret. So instead of like leaving it down with pressure, we release that pressure. We still are in contact with the string. We move and we put down the pressure again. And one exercise that I really like to do sometimes when I don't do it as a technique exercise, but I do it in passages with shifts, is to work my shift. I wouldn't say jump. I would say jump, but people will get confused. but little by little. So to reach that big leap that we need, to do it little by little, and of course accompany the movement, not just with the big sudden jump. But if you see what I'm also doing, I'm always anticipating a bit the movement with the arm, and with like don't want to say that I do a movement, because no, I'm not doing a movement. I'm just anticipating it, so it will be smoother. And I release the tension, leave the finger there. I'm in contact, but I don't press, so I don't hear any sound in the middle. It will take a while, but and also I feel like the first obstacle to shifts is fear. The fear of it, because that makes us going faster, sudden and very mechanical movements that are not helping the shift. We have all the time to do it. It's always like we have enough time. We don't have lack of time. Even if it's fast, we can do it even with a lot of legato. So we shouldn't be afraid of the shift. But we should also release all that extra tension from the finger and put it down just when we land on the right spot. So that was one thing that I really probably said in 80% of the exams. So it's really, I found myself repeating it a lot in different contexts maybe, but it was really consistent, I think. And I know why it would happen. Like it happened to me too. So in the guitar journey. Last but not least, and now I'm ready for all the questions and I'm ready for all the criticisms. But okay, it's a more musical thing, and it's about rubato. That I will say in a better way, Italian way, rolling my R, better in Italian, rubato. That actually in Italian means stolen. And that maybe it's just a little thing that you can just for working the imagination in it. And I think that it's really good to use these tools like dynamics, like rubato, like diminuendo, accelerando, rallentando, and all those things are so good because they will make our playing more interesting and our pieces more interesting. And it allows also to put some of ourselves in the piece that we play. But one risk with rubato is that I feel sometimes it doesn't feel natural. It's like, for instance, when you stop all of a sudden, instead of like slowing it down, or like if we are on the car and we hit brakes, and if we want to slow down in a natural way, you don't of course hit the brakes so badly, because that results in all of a sudden like a stop that it's not natural at all. And what I hear sometimes on the pieces is that this use of rubato is doesn't seem natural, and the phrase will jump to faster or slower tempo from a note to another. And so how do we talk and how do we explain what rubato is? And from the Italian word rubato, that is stolen, I want to understand that it's not a change of tempo. It's a stretch. So we're taking a bit from here and then we'll give it back in another moment. So we are stretching the tempo. We are not actually changing it. It should all happen in the same pace, and we can maybe do a little bit of an accelerando in a phrase and then go back, because we have to rebalance that that shape and that direction that we took. So how I see it is more like a stretch, like a bouncing thing, taking and giving back, taking and giving back. It actually happens a lot to mention that Devise prelude lesson that Simon did just right the other day. And it happens a lot in that prelude, for instance. It's a little joy for the listener, this little, like, just one page of a beautiful piece, and with these phrases where the player actually is encouraged to move inside of the line, of the musical line. But and especially from the beginning, when we had da 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 da, like let's take it. This very first line, I've heard, for instance, a lot of ideas like, okay, start very soft and lento, and then all of a sudden, fast. So these, of course, interrupt the flow of the melody. And it is really good to take that freedom of moving that line, but it should all happen in a natural way. And a way to understand if it looks natural or not, for instance, I can record myself and see and listen back and see if it makes sense. If it's like I can follow the phrase in a like if I'm saying something, if it's a very natural flow and pace of the phrase, or if it feels like sudden or something. And of course, the other thing is that if we start moving the tempo, we should also come back to the actual tempo that we chose for the piece at some point. We cannot do an accelerando and then maintain it, because then we change tempo for the whole piece. And that happens too. So how do we work that? And how do we teach that? I don't really know. I don't have the answer. Like, I cannot tell you what I do. I sing a lot phrases, and I sing a lot with my playing. But because also I like singing, and I also record myself. What I hear when I play is never what I hear when I look at myself back in a video. Never. There's things that I noticed that it's just, they weren't there before. It's not the same person that was playing before, and it's actually the same person, but I couldn't notice because I was from the inside. I couldn't look it from the outside. So it is a big topic, and I want to encourage people to use more of these tools because they make music interesting. But try to find a way to have that as natural as possible. I think I will wrap up this saying that the key word of these lot of words that I just said is natural in all the meanings, like natural position, natural everything, relax and natural, because that actually makes the difference in our playing.
Yeah, I feel like we have to applause. Everyone give Nikki the wash hand symbol in the comments. That was fantastic, Nikki. Thank you so much.
Everybody, and stay home.
Yeah, no, that was just phenomenal. So I'm going to bring us back to our little trio on the screen. Everyone's washing hands in the comments. That's great. There was a question. Martha, I did see a question coming from you, but we might leave it right to the end if questions are sort of on a different topic. But there was a good question from Mr. Bob Bagley asking about the shifting, Nikki, in regards to how that works on wound strings as opposed to the nylon strings.
Oh, very, very, very interesting topic, because we enter another thing, because I've talked recently to a person who was obsessed with noises on the bass strings. And well, I had lessons, and we were talking about noises, and for instance, like these extra noises that we hear when we shift. I tend to have the same technique of shift, like even if I shift on the bass strings, and it's easier to do it on the nylon strings, of course. One thing that I found interesting that I change a bit when I play bass strings and I do shifts on bass strings is that I changed a little bit the angle of my finger to shift, because that helps to cancel the noises. Never. So if you have to record, maybe use recording strings, try everything, not have them too new, brand new, and do something. But it actually removed some of that, and my shifts will sound more accurate. So I do a little movement like that, and I apply a little slightly different pressure to it.
Yeah, thank you. So hopefully, Bob, that answers your question. Well, I thought that was all. Thank you so much. It's really appropriate and concise and well explained. So thank you, Nikki.
Hey, like that's actually, thank you, because I'm always self-aware about my explanations in English.
No, it's
I think I'm getting better. I think I'm getting better, but sometimes I just make weird turnarounds in my phrases because grammarly they're not really accurate. But thank you. I'm happy, and of course, if something was not clear, you can ask questions, and at the end we can we can discuss those.
Well, I think that the lack of questions right now is a testament to how well you explained yourself. So thank you again. Well, Dave, we might head over to you now and give you the floor.
All right. Okay, so this round of submissions, like every previous round, has increased in quality, and I'm just really impressed with everyone's hard work. And you can see very tangible results in terms of the kind of work that everyone's putting in. So congratulations to everyone that did submit. I'm mostly going to be talking about the left hand. I have a couple of other issues I want to address, but the left hand came up so many times during my feedback videos. I thought it was a good point to address. And there are two main things that I want to touch on that cropped up in most of my exams were grades 1 to 3. And so a lot of beginners who come to the guitar either have played previous styles of guitar, which can affect the left hand, or they've never played any guitar at all. And so they're really trying to find a good natural position for the hand, coming from either a different instrument or never playing any music at all. So the very first issue that I noticed.
Dave, can I just ask, could you turn off the background blurring thing on Skype? Because it's cutting out your left hand.
Let me see if I know how to do this.
Right,
I didn't even know it was on. Settings. Okay.
Because then it's going to be sort of it's going to be a mystery what your left hand is doing.
Thank you for letting me know. Does anyone know? I'm sure Roger does. How I find
Roger the rescue. Oops.
Blur my background. Found it. Okay.
Perfect.
Should be good.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. Okay. So the very first thing I noticed is a very common tendency that's often affected by the sitting position. So when we're playing with the left hand, Simon often tells us to have a good square horizontal position. That is, keeping the fingers aligned with your knuckles parallel to the strings rather than turning to the side, which is a very common position for violinists and other string instruments. But on the guitar, because we have so many different moving voices that we're controlling, with maybe one voice is being held by a finger on one string and then other fingers are moving to play a different voice, we really need to have a good square position where the fingers are aligned parallel to the strings. Well, when we play on the 6th string in particular, sometimes the wrist can pop out to help us reach the 6th string. Or another recommendation for getting good clearance of the strings, that is, if I play and I want to make sure that this is clearing the adjacent string underneath it, that is the 1st string in this case, we need to have the fingers really nice and curled, because if they flatten out and go straight, we get a buzz from the adjacent string, and sometimes we need to hear that adjacent string as well. On the 6th string, to get a good curl in the fingers, I often see people popping their wrist out like this, and Nikki gave us kind of a masterclass on relieving tension in the right hand. And that's very much at issue here as well. If the wrist pops out like this to reach the 6th string and to get some good curl on those fingers, we're adding tension into the wrist. We're stretching those tendons across the bone there. And like I said, it's often a result of the sitting position. So I often see if I can get a better position with the camera here. When the neck is a little too low, then we have to reach out with the hand to get to the 6th string. And you'll notice my wrist really has to pop out. There's very little I can do except dropping the elbow in and dropping the shoulder, which can cause a lot of extra tension as well. A very simple solution is to get the guitar in a better position so the neck is nice and high. And so the goal here is to relax the wrist. Instead of popping it out, allow it to relax. But the very first thing that happens when we relax the wrist is our fingers straighten out, especially on the 6th string. And so if we want to get a good curl in the fingers, but also not pop the wrist out, we have to allow this kind of inner row of knuckles here, the palm of the hand, to come closer to the neck. And so instead of kind of allowing a lot of space between the palm of the hand and the bottom of the neck, we just allow it to crop up a little closer. And sometimes when you're playing on the sixth string, the palm will touch the bottom of the neck, and that's okay. But the goal here is to be nice and relaxed and still have that good square position with our fingers curled. So that's sort of the very first thing that I noticed, a lot of tension cropping up by popping the wrist out instead of allowing it to be nice and relaxed. So the very first thing, get your guitar in a good position. Make sure it's not either too far away from the shoulder or too low. So just a nice comfortable position where your shoulders are nice and relaxed. So the sitting position is very important for all of our elements of technique. And then relaxing the wrist while maintaining that curl in the fingers by keeping the palm closer to the neck. Okay, and then another issue, somewhat closely related, also in the left hand, that I noticed is when we're lifting fingers after playing. So for instance, this exercise is in the practice routines in several different permutations, which is a chromatic exercise where the fingers walk 1, 2, 3, 4 on successive strings. And we go all the way up the strings. And then we come back down. And when we lift, I saw a lot of this. Or, so sometimes pinkies would stick up, we'll call flyaway fingers, and other times the pinky would tuck in fingers. It's not only with the pinky, but the pinky is usually the culprit here. It's most often the culprit with this particular exercise. And so when we lift off the strings, as Nikki said with the right hand, if the finger comes up too much, then we have to come back a pretty big distance to play the next note. And so we can often lose some accuracy. That applies exactly here as well. If the left hand pinky finger flies away from the string, it has a great distance to get back to the string, which takes time and can affect accuracy. It also introduces tension, though. If you just do this, hold up your pinky finger straight, and then try to move your other fingers, you can feel tension in this side of your hand. Now let your pinky finger relax and move your other fingers. It should feel much more relaxed. So an exercise that I gave to a lot of different folks with this issue is basically the same left hand walking. So we're going to do the 4, 3, 2, 1 descending, but slightly modified. And it goes like this. You play the fourth finger with the right hand, and then lift. But when you lift, stop. So we're not going to do 3, 2, 1 yet. Stop right at 4. And I want you to be in full control of the motion of that finger. So if you do this, or if you do this, then you're going a little too quickly, and you need to slow down so you have full control over that motion of the finger. And when you lift, there's very little difference between this and this. I don't know the distance there, but it's very small. You don't have to lift very far at all. When you're in full control of it, it stays hovering right over the string about 1 millimeter or so, let's say. And then from there, we're going to do 3 to 2. So we lift the 3, and now we have an even more difficult situation because we have to control 2 fingers that are hovering over the string at the same time. And so again, just take it really nice and slowly, 1 step at a time. 4 to 3, make sure you have that under really good control before moving on. 3, 2, and the same thing. Really good full control over those fingers so they're just hovering right over the strings, and then 2, 1. So you're just breaking it down into tiny little chunks and taking it 1 step at a time. And as Simon often says, when we change technique, so for instance, if this is my technique, that the finger flies away from the string, it will take time and adjustment. It's sort of like when you pull a rubber band, it always wants to come back to, whatever, slack. It always wants to contract. There will be that sort of tendency as well where you're kind of fighting that tendency of the finger to either lift or tuck in. So really take your time with it and be patient. I recommend just spending a couple minutes every time you sit down with the guitar on this kind of exercise, where you have full control over the motion of the finger. And if you do that just a couple minutes every day and you're consistent with it, within a month, minimum, I think, but within a month, you'll definitely see some big results. So those are the two main left-hand issues that I saw crop up in many of the exams. Another issue that popped up quite a bit, there are several repertoire pieces where we have repeating sections. So an AABB, a binary form, where we have two different sections, each of which repeat. So for instance, Fernando Sohr's Study in B minor, we have this first section which has a repeat, so you go back to the beginning and play it again, and then a second section that also repeats, where you go back to the second section and repeat it and play until the end. At those repeat marks, I heard a lot of people do something like this. Take a lot of time at the end of the phrase, adding kind of a pause or a fermata. And the B, the very last note in that bar, this is, if you're following along at home, this is bar 16, measure 16 of the Study in B minor, Opus 35, number 22. It's only a quarter note. And so it's really important, especially when we're in the middle of a piece, that we don't stop the pulse unless the composer's given us a fermata and said, this is a place where I want you to pause, so that the pulse continues to go until we reach the end. It gives the ending more finality if we're not pausing at stations along the way, which sound kind of like a quasi-ending. This can also happen at the end of phrases. So a really big one that popped up is the end of this section, measure 31, where we have the dominant chord. All this tension builds up. I'm playing the wrong notes, though. And then right here, I heard a lot of people really draw out that measure and then add a pause on the last F sharp. And this gets to Nikki's point about rubato. The intuition here is correct to kind of allow for some stretching of time. But if we add a pause that's too long there, it sounds almost final and you're leaving the audience in suspense for what's next. We want that pulse to be able to continue so that the structure, the rhythm isn't disrupted too much. And this is something that actually Simon mentioned in a video from our last exam submission. So I did see it crop up quite a bit this time, but Simon has a whole video on transitions across bar lines and transitions at repeated sections. And so I'm going to throw that in the chat so you can all see that now. And Simon's video is fantastic, so I would direct you there for a little bit more on that. Okay, one more thing. The last thing that I saw. So one of the wonderful things about the practice routines that I love so much about what Simon's done here is there are all of these exercises that are working out the mechanics of technique, how to use free stroke and rest stroke and what to do with the left hand and so on. But there's also many exercises that incorporate musicality so that when you're working on technique, you're also developing your musicality. Dynamics, color changes, articulation are all a part of these exercises. It's fantastic. So in practice routine 5, which came up a lot in the exams that I was grading, there are several different places where we have accents, big dynamic changes, color changes, articulations. And what I noticed is so many folks did a fantastic job with crafting beautiful gradations and dynamics and big dramatic color changes with punticello and really dark, warm tasto. But then when they would move to the repertoire, those elements weren't there, or they were there in many fewer quantities. So I think when you're learning to play a piece of music, when you're first sitting down with a piece of music, one thing that I would encourage you to do is to approach it just like these practice routines, injecting it with musicality from the very beginning, really imagining if I put my finger here, so I'm learning how to play this particular note and where it is on the fingerboard and all of that. If I play it with a certain color, does it affect the kind of sound that I want to express with the music? There's a bit of a balance here where you do have to kind of get your fingers into learning, what's the phrase, get my fingers around a piece, to really get your fingers to learn where they need to be, the different fingerings that you'll use. But as Simon often reminds us, the fingerings we use affect the musical outcome. So really begin to think about those things very early in the process. Don't wait till later, because then you kind of have to start over almost and rethink the whole process. That's actually something that Simon touched on in his wonderful workshop on how to learn a piece of repertoire. So that's all I got. Yeah, fantastic job to everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, washing hands.
We should change also the we shouldn't do clapping anymore, but just washing hands is like.
Well, that was great. I'm kind of floored by both of the eloquence with which you delivered, but also excellent advice. It's almost like you've said this to people before, like 100 times. No, well, thank you so much. It's a really fantastic advice and spot on. And I did see a couple questions come in, Dave. I'm going to see if I can dig between the washing of hands that are coming through in the comments.
And while we are looking at that, I really enjoyed something that Dave said, and it comes to my mind that the same advice also solves another problem. Like when you were talking about how it would like the knuckles towards the fretboard to have a better position and avoid this. That same work of working on just going up with the knuckles and going towards and have less space in between the fingers actually helps a lot. Another big problem when you have your pinky getting stuck and overextended. Yeah. It's something that happens a lot, and actually I used to have that problem before, like that your pinky gets stuck there. I can't do it anymore, but it actually this solves the problem because you avoid that finger to have enough space to extend. And that's exactly the same advice, and I think that's a great thing to explore. Another direction of the left hand. So that's great.
Yes, the tip joint, it can get locked in place, or it can buckle in the opposite direction. And I keep referring to Simon because most of my technique tips comes from Simon anyway. I just rob everything he does and pass it back out.
Right. So I've robbed them. There's nothing new under the sun, as they say. We're grateful to our traditions for passing this down.
If you're curious where some of these tips come from, you haven't seen the fundamentals video, if you're an academy member, the fundamentals course, the videos on the left-hand position are excellent, and I go through a lot of these tips. But Simon talks about I say this sometimes, hopefully you will never be holding on for dear life at the edge of a cliff, but were you to do so, you wouldn't do so like this because you're probably going to fall. Instead, you really want to hold on for dear life to curl those fingers. That's where you get strength and leverage. So yeah, exactly. If that tip joint collapses like that, or it becomes locked on the pinky, then you lose all strength and endurance.
So I did find some questions. Kerry asks, I notice when I relax my left hand during repertoire playing, let's see if I can put it up here. There it goes. I sometimes mute the E string when I position my palm too close to the neck. And then following up from that, she said, is it okay to pop out the wrist sometimes in repertoire, case by case, on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, it's sort of like, this is something that we deal with in terms of positioning in other respects too. For instance, there are all kinds of chord formulations or positions on the guitar where we have to turn the hand out of that square position that I was mentioning. So for instance, this is a very common chord on the guitar, the A chord, or the diminished chord actually. We really have to allow the hand to be a little bit more left in that kind of violin position than that square position, because then it becomes very difficult to get your fingers up snug against the frets. Especially this chord. The first finger is really far back in the fret in this case. And so we can allow ourselves to turn to the left at times or to the right at times as well for this kind of chord, which is also very, very common in the repertoire. So long as we return back to stasis. So for instance, if you're needing to play something on the 6th string and also the E string, you can allow for a little bit more space. It doesn't mean popping the wrist out though. So the only correction I would say is similar to lifting of the fingers, you don't need too much space to allow that clearance. It's not a big gap. So you should still be able to have a good curl in the fingers and allow just a little bit of space to clear the first string. But then again, you want to allow the hand to return back to kind of its stasis, to its neutral position.
Great.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Well, we will. It was already 5 o'clock, so and that was just fantastic. I do have a small. I'm not going to dive into guitar technique, but I do have a couple of little points that I wanted to convey. But I also had a couple of thoughts while you were both talking about a couple of things on the string shifting and the rubato, and then there was a question about Segovia's guitar position. It's sort of like, as in, so there's a couple of things I want to just say. One, in terms of movement and rubato, I like to think very much physically when I'm describing sonic aspects. So crescendos, decrescendos, or accelerando, rallentando. I hope I'm saying this okay, Nikki. Rallentando, accelerando. I often will give, I love analogy and I love visual depictions. So one would be a roller coaster going tick, 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 and sort of, or someone very beautifully back in Sydney years and years ago, we were at a house party and there was a gust of wind and she said, that's how I hear crescendo. It's like a wind going through a tree, it taps into that word that Nikki was using, which is natural. So there's aspects of the technique we're talking about, natural. So Nikki talked about shifting up a string, and you don't just go, zip, it's not a forced movement. When you throw a ball, you don't just go, blah, you wind up, and then you throw. When you take a leap, you get other parts of your body involved other than your legs. If you were to try and describe that to someone, say, okay, start collapsing your knees, bring your elbows back like a chicken, bring your shoulders in, trying to describe a leap with 2 feet, that would be very difficult. In fact, just trying to describe walking across a room would be difficult if you tried to describe it in mechanical steps. So, I remember having another famous Italian guitarist is Agnello Desiderio. And I was lucky to have a class with him once, and I was playing the Paganini Sonata, and he said, I don't know how, I'm not going to try and do an Italian accent, but he's got like a really charismatic voice, and he's like, oh, I see you dance with your fingers too. And so the idea of dancing with your fingers, I think, encapsulates a lot of, if we're talking about shifting and bringing the elbow in and leading with the wrist, all this, think of it like, I'm in this little box here, I can't move too much, but dancing, right? The flow, it comes into a natural aspect of what the body does. Grab the pen, that's how it naturally works. And then that brings me around to the question about, well, didn't Segovia hold his guitar lower? And it reminds me of an email we got just a couple days ago and asking, what methodology are you teaching here at CGC? So I think the person was thinking, are you teaching the Russian school of piano? Are you teaching the Calavaro technique? Are you teaching, who are you teaching? Well, we don't follow anyone, really. I think if there's any driving force behind what we do, it's about ergonomics, and it's about allowing the body to work as best as it can to bring out the music. And technique, in its fundamental sense, is us creating a series of movements that allow us to express our musicality as people. This is the instrument. This is the first instrument. The guitar is the second instrument. Our musicality is there. We're all musicians, and we all address you as musicians in emails. That's because you are musicians, and it's the ability to translate your musicality through the instrument, which is key. That's what technique's all about. It's not about playing fast. It's not about all these little boxes we can put in. It's about, are you able to freely express your musicality? And so having said that, some people are tall, some people are short, everyone's got different body shapes, some people have arthritis, some people are missing fingers. So you can take what we've talked about today in terms of technique, and you might need to adapt it to your body and your needs. We do ask the people in the academy to at the very least try what we're talking about to the best of their ability before going on explorations, because we stand behind this sort of ergonomic approach. But I think you do need to, as the old Delphic oracle said, know thyself. And that brings me to my point. My point was regarding, and hang on, I'm gonna do this thing where I should have done this before so I could wave my hands around. What I wanted to mention was about the exams themselves. So they serve many purposes to many different people, and they're different. People take them for different reasons. And I'm so happy, as Dave said and Nikki said, the standard has just gone up and up and up over the years, and I think it's a credit to the academy, the teachers, everyone involved, really. It's just sort of, as a culture, as a group, we've improved year over year because people see other submissions and they get inspired, and the level just keeps rising, which is fantastic. Along with that cultural benefit there, I think there's a cultural aspect that I would wish to sort of rein in a little bit, and that is the speed at which we try and do these exams. In my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, and it may not suit you, but I think we should take more time to explore these grades and worlds. And again, it's you need to know yourself and how you work and what's best for you in regards to why do an exam. Is the point to be able to tick the boxes and be able to play through a practice routine and play through the pieces and get the right rhythm with the right pitch? Or should we aim for a place to be where we are feeling like these are old friends that we can express musically, and in fact, I used to play it this way, and right now I'm playing it this way. We've been through a journey with these pieces. Everything's in context. So you've got grade 1 where we're really learning some mechanics, and sometimes pieces, you're doing them to get some educational value out of them. But especially in the higher grades, where I consider a lot of the pieces in the higher grades to be musical masterpieces. There's a lot there. And I'm grateful to some of the students who recently reached out and had an exam ready. In fact, someone actually had an exam recorded. And I'm grateful that they took my advice, and actually they're going to stay with that material for another 6 months. And the reason is, this person would have passed, but what does that mean for them? Does that mean, oh, now I'm going to play something else because I passed? I think it's more beneficial, especially towards the higher end of the grades, to stay with these pieces for longer. So it's not about will I pass or will I not. It's about this is a representation of where I've gone on a journey for the last years as a musician. And to give you a context, I did these grades or similar grades in Australia when I was young. In grade 7, we were talking about at least a year, if not 2 years. People have a little bit of a rhythm of every 6 months trying to jump up a grade. And I would suggest considering doubling that. Basically, yes, grade 1, grade 2, I think that's feasible. But after that, it's sort of starting to extend out to a year to 18 months. And again, just thinking about what are we trying to achieve with the grades. Not sometimes, we always get a flood of exam submissions at the end of the month. So the last 24 hours, we get about, 30 or 40% of the exams. And that's understandable. I work kind of the same way, to be honest. I understand that there's a deadline. The deadline's useful because it pushes you to get something done. However, I guess I'm just asking us to reflect on the value of rushing to get something over the line, rather than, I know 6 months can be a span of time, but I really believe in that 6 months, because if we have smaller partitions, it doesn't allow us to stretch our discipline. I think those 6 months gaps allow us to stretch our patience and discipline so that we can actually live with the music for longer. And you all of you, I think, who've been with music for a while, you know what it feels like to be in command of a piece, to feel confident with a piece. And that's what I wish for people who submit exams, is not, did I make it over the line? It's, I want to present this work that I've done, and I feel this is my musical comment about it even. There is quite a gap for me as viewing some of these exams where someone's expressing musical ideas compared to someone rushing to meet a deadline. And all of this is with a grain of salt, because I do understand, well, you put the date and I want to get it in. So it really is just something to consider. But if I had one slight wish as a slight cultural change with the exams, it would just be to sort of slow things down a little bit. There's a fast progression between the grades, in my opinion. As many of you know, but just for clarity, the purpose of the grades for us is not, a lot of the other exams you get A, B, C, or D, and high distinctions, and they comment on your how well did you pass. You can pass, but with different letter names. I don't think that's particularly useful. I think actually we probably know we're all adults. Actually, I don't think there are any kids in the academy, so we're quite good at knowing where we're at if we're honest with ourselves. So for me as a teacher, the purpose is really to say, yes, I think you can move on to more difficult material, and it's not going to harm your technique. But when we see things that are going to be a hindrance, like repeated rhythms that are just clearly incorrect, so there's a misunderstanding of rhythms, or right-hand techniques that are bad and will only compound with harder music, then I really think we are doing a disservice to the students if we say, yes, please go ahead and study harder material. And I will also say, I'm speaking on behalf of Nikki and Dave, but I think it's true. We don't lose sleep over asking people to resubmit, but pretty close. Like I struggle a lot because, again, it's that question of, well, yes, the boxes are ticked, but if I really want this person to do well over a long span of time, I have to be, tough and blunt and say, look, I think you should stay in this area for a while because you might do yourself a disservice in the long run. The really tricky thing about that is keeping people in context. I mean, everyone's in here with different agendas. Some people have, they are teachers. Some people aspire to be teachers. Some people want to do concerts and recordings. And some people just want to have this as a joyful part of their life. And so it's a real juggling act to try and know the people and make a decision that is right for them, because we don't want to be a dampener of joy. I very much understand that joy is probably the most important. It's one of our core values, along with good coffee, actually. But joy and enjoyment fuels everything, fuels all that good work. It fuels attendance at events, it fuels performances, everything. So we really want to be careful about dampening any joy, but at the same time being responsible. So that's what we think about. That's what we go through. If you ever get asked to do a resubmit, that's the thought process behind it. And you're an adult, and you can go on and take on hard material should you wish to. That's your choice, but we have to be responsible in terms of what messages we're sending. So that was what I wanted to convey, and I think it's been great. So thank you, team.
We should applaud to you too.
Hand washing in the chat.
Who I also would like to mention, I did mention him at the beginning, but I'd like to say a big thank you to James Erickson, who helped us for the first time in this round of exams. he's not with us today on this call, but he did grade 4, and we're really grateful to his efforts and feedback. So thank you, James. Now, it is the end of this session. Let's see if we have any more questions. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question. Hans is sort of commenting back about the Segovia thing, and I think you could probably find amazing musicians that would contradict everything we said today, every single thing. Yeah. And that would include Segovia and Julian Bream. You know, like you could find, and especially moments, you could cherry pick moments. And Presti Lagoya, this is one of the famous right hands. Judicaire Perrois with his students with gigantic thumbnails and different right hand positions. Even Thomas Villotto, who teaches at Peabody, he's got quite an extraordinary right hand position that's almost collapsed a little bit and plays lengthwise. So, but these are people. So obviously these things can work. Actually, I'm interested. So Nikki, what would you say if someone came to you and said, look at this player, and their right hand is dramatically different, what would your response be?
Yeah. One thing is that we're all different, and I agree what you said before. Like, not everything works for everybody, so we have to learn how to listen to ourselves. But on the other level, it does like there's no right or wrong, but there is, for me, in the way I want to teach, there is relaxed or not relaxed. And that means that sometimes you have to readjust whatever I'm saying to your body. But the fact that you take somebody else's technique, visual technique, what you see, because they are incredible musicians, that also will not work for us. Okay, I see, okay, Segovia was amazing guitarist. Well, I wouldn't take Segovia particularly because Segovia was a while ago, and he was one of the pioneers in that sense. But the guitar technique changed so much after that. It's like, it's normal because it evolves. Guitars changed, guitarists changed. There was so much more study behind the guitar. The guitar entered the conservatory in Italy like in 1980, not before. So it was not even a thing in the big schools yet. So the guitar has changed a lot and evolved a lot. So now I think that we can really think back to the guitar technique in a more physical and like way. So we can understand which muscles are involved, which movements are involved. And I think that yes, looking back at Segovia, just having him as a model of what he did with the repertoire and how amazing player he was. But there's plenty of other guitarists now, and the technique changed a lot from that. If we take recent guitarists instead, yes, we can see everything. But if I try to use the same technique that of a guitarist that I love, and I take it on my hands, it won't work, because it's not for me. It's not for me, not for my hands. But what I think we all three teach, it's an approach that has to be like, we're finding the easiest way possible to play, something that free yourself from every extra obstacle. And in this process, there's going to be a lot of auto-observing. So that's my encouragement, is like that I'm telling you what I think is right. And then we can discuss about your feelings, how you feel, and that if there's something that doesn't work, and we can explore that. And last thing, because this is a big thing, but the same time I was working with Andrea Dieci, I worked with the person that actually probably changed the most my technique, and is Bruno Giuffredi. Amazing teacher. He's an amazing guitarist, but he teaches like kind of a René Izquierdo one. That approach that he looks at you and X-ray. on you. And he said, you need these. He doesn't say, this is how you do. It says, you need these. Because it looks at the issues and understands. So what is the most important as a student and as a teacher is address the problems. Try to understand what is on the way that we have to get rid of. So that's the approach that I want to have, because of course everything can be contradicted. Everything.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's 5:20 now, and I know Dave had to cook pancakes at 5 yesterday. I don't know what he has to cook for his family tonight. Are you on duty?
It's cooking. I can smell the pulled pork. I'm sorry to anyone who's hungry, but it smells amazing.
Well, I know there's a few more questions, and I apologize, but we probably will wrap it up. Dave, Nick, is there anything you'd like to say to all the peeps still watching?
Great job with your exams.
Yeah. Yeah, and just I wanted to point, Simon, to a comment that Jose made that I'm going to lose it, but in Suzuki, he said, moving from grade 1 to grade 8 takes 15 years. Just for perspective. And we often get that question coming into the email, how long will it take me? In fact, I just talked to someone on the phone the other day. If I do this and I work really hard and I practice an hour a day and I'm really disciplined, how long will it take me? And I think the answer is it takes as long as it takes.
100% true. You will always be accurate with that answer too. All right. Well, thank you, Dave and Nikki, and thank you everyone for watching and tuning in. And we'll see you all. Well, the next session will be next Tuesday. I feel like we should have more of the CGC team on for these sessions. We'll have to think of something else to talk about. But all right. Well,
pancakes.
Sorry.
Pancakes recipe.
Pancakes. How to make spaghetti from scratch.
Yes.
Okay, next time it's a cooking.
Cooking. Yes. Yeah. I don't know what I can provide, but I can definitely open a can of beer or something. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Dave and Nikki.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.